Now, do many of you know each other, or are you from individual communities?
Actually, he's in Toronto, his family.
First time in the parliamentary dining room?
There wasn't much going on
And I'm going to take the camera out.
Don't blame that. No, he takes him out. This is it.
I used to be a foreign correspondent as well for Canadian CTV, so I know what it's like to be in another place, covering.
A few days ago, were you in Naya's restaurant?
Yes.
Mr. Papas and one of the senators were trying to arrange an interview during the summer. Okay. The Greek National Network.
Okay, yeah, we'll keep.
Your father is an idol.
Yes, I'm very lucky to have
Thank you.
Honor and privilege to meet you, and thank you so much for coming up to the Hill. And if there's anything, that my office can do for you, please do not hesitate to contact us. My field of interest here, I'm the environment critic for our party. So if there's anything I can do for you, please contact my office. Many thanks.
As you mentioned, environment, I know there's been a lot of heat on the government about its inaction, and we expect some more heat coming from the Liberals this year. What's on the board from your standpoint?
I'm conscious, I know Bob's coming. I'll give you a bit of my background. I'm a former environment professor, and the environment is my passion. It's what I've spent 25 years of my life studying, and we will hold the government to account on this, and we will fight very hard for a balance between the environment and the economy.
I've also been joined by Mark Eiking. Mark Eiking gets elected out in Maritimes, and he's our critic for CETA. Morel, if you want a couple of words, please. En anglais, Morel.
Member of Parliament Robert Vanier, je suis également co-président de l'Association parlementaire Canada-Afrique, co-chair of the Canada-Africa Parliamentary Association. Bienvenido aquí, muchas gracias por ser aquí. Et c'est à peu près tout ce que je sais, peut-être salam alaikum, mais avant de ça, mon arabe est pas très fort. I wanted to say that we're very fortunate to have you here today, because I've been involved with the Liberal Party since I was very young, for over 40 years now, because it's the party that has no ideology except the well-being of Canadians and of Canada, and the people who come and join us here. Throughout our history, starting principally in the 60s, we have created a space in this country that is a welcoming space. And the result is perhaps one of the most diversified countries in the world, where nothing is perfect, yet we manage to live side by each in diversity and respect of our pluralism. The Aga Khan himself recognizes that Canada is perhaps the best example of pluralism in action. Help us make it even better. Thank you.
Mark, you want to join the conversation, please?
Yes. Thank you, Jimmy, and welcome everybody. I met many of you at lunchtime. Hope everybody enjoyed their lunch. There was a little bit of a problem. They didn't want people taking pictures up there at lunchtime, but you're free to take them here. Yeah, my name is Mark Eiking. I'm a member of Parliament from the East Coast, Cape Breton. My parents are Dutch immigrants. They came from Holland right after the war. One of the things that brought them to Canada was not only opportunity, but was the tolerance of other groups. And so it's great to see all of you here. You people represent a large group of, so we'll be pushing hard back. Of course, this budget's coming up and at the end of this week. And we're very concerned, as our party is and our leader, about the aid that should be increased, if anything, and which we'll probably see a decrease. So So anyway, I'm not going to say much more because the leader has just landed, but you're free to contact me anytime in any aid issues, and we'll be looking forward to seeing what happens after the budget. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. How are you?
I have to add something, because otherwise I'm not going to be welcome home tonight.
Of Canadians, and well, we have some problems. I'm the seated critic, and we have some problems with the present government, how they're dealing with funding of programs in different countries, especially how they're doing less funding in Africa, and a lot of the fundings they're picking groups and not picking groups. So we have a real problem on their decision-making process for aid. Right now they're leaving a lot of the aid decisions to the private sector, which is very worrisome. We have a lot of good NGOs out there, and they're getting taken off the table because of their ideologies, not what conservatives believe in.
My colleagues, Kirsty Duncan and Ted Hsu are here, and we're very delighted to continue the dialogue which we've had over the last several months and years, and want to congratulate Mr. Karygiannis for doing the great work that he continues to do with the multicultural community across the country. I'm very happy to answer any questions that you might have. I think you can see that this week in the House, obviously, the focus will be, on the arrival of the new leader of the New Democratic Party, and then subsequently on the issue of the budgets, both in Ontario and naturally the federal budget on Thursday. I always like to say that you don't really see what a government is all about until you see its budgets, until you see where they're spending and where they're cutting, and what their priorities and policies really are. And I think that's when things will become very clear. I am very concerned about the government's approach to immigration and their approach to multiculturalism generally. I have to say that on immigration, my concern is that it is the clear objective of the Conservative Party to politicize the entire field of immigration policy in quite, I think, ways that are very detrimental to the country. And in particular, I think the way in which the concerns of people who are here to be able to be joined by their families, and the way in which that has been cast aside and put to the far corners of our immigration policy poses a huge problem. And I think the federal government basically seems to have an approach of saying we are responsible for letting people come in, but we're not responsible for what happens afterwards. So if it's issues of settlement, issues of integration, issues of discrimination, issues around housing and work and jobs and getting people totally involved in the economy, they have much less to say and do about that. Secondly, I think that underneath a sense of continuation of Canadian policy, that is to say that we have been since the 1960s a country that is, generally speaking, sees itself as open to immigration and to accepting large numbers of people every year. I think there's been one very significant change which we're now beginning to see embedded in the statistics that affect new Canadians. Whereas there was a time when people came to this country, they could be assured that in 10 years, or 15 years, or 20 years, be in your hands for a while in terms of any dialogue or issues that you'd like to discuss.
On the matter of settlement, Mr. Ray, the government seems to be cutting... Push the button. Push the button. Yeah, on the question of settlement, the government seems to be cutting wider and deeper. Consistently, and I was told only yesterday, that more cuts are coming to settlement agencies' funding. I know that people have said in the past that when you're in opposition, there's nothing you can do but oppose. However, in the spirit of making changes, being progressive, that we know you are known for, how or what can you do along with us to perhaps understand, let Mr. Kenny and his team understand that what they're doing is absolutely not...
I think what we'll be doing, William, and if I may say so, it's a pleasure to see you again, and we have a long history and association, you and I, so it's very good to see you in this circumstance. I hope you're not prepared to deny our friendship and our history together. Thank you. I think that what we're going to do after the budget is establish not a multitude, but 2 or 3 task forces of our caucus to go out and look at the impact of the budget in very human terms. And I certainly feel that this is one area where we really have to understand what's going on. We really have to understand its impact in communities. And we have to see the risk of taking the kind of approach which the government appears to be very determined to take in terms of the overall cuts that may be happening. So I hope we can, you're right, I mean, unfortunately for maybe my timing hasn't always been the best, but I spent most of my political life in opposition. And I don't think that they have been years of ineffectiveness. I think that what one does is not just rail against the government, not just criticize it, but to say constructively, what can we do to engage with communities, to say how can we make the case to public opinion, to the Canadian people as to why this is important and why it matters that people are simply not getting the services and not getting the help and assistance that they need. What I have described, you and I are both from Toronto, what I have described in terms of the gap between rich and poor has been documented by the United Way, by the City of Toronto, by the Conference Board of Canada, by every major study that's been done on what I call this question of the condition of the people. And what we're finding is there's increasing ghettoization. Increasingly people are being left behind. Increasingly it's been proving difficult for people to get reasonably paying jobs. And we're seeing this pattern being passed on from generation to generation. They would be better off. Their incomes would be higher. Their access to jobs and education would be better. They would have a house. They would have security. They'd be moving forward. Over the last 20 years, but in particular in the last 10 years, we've seen a real deterioration in that circumstance. And what we've seen is that poverty is higher in certain immigrant groups than it is elsewhere, that lack of education and training is higher, and that this phenomenon that we've all can see happening in Canada, where those in the middle and lower parts of our economy are falling further and further behind, and the gaps between rich and poor is growing. We've seen the meaning of that change. And that, I think, is something that should concern everyone in the country, because it is that which will create the greater challenges with respect to integration and improving the condition of the people. So, having said all that, I'm very happy to answer any questions, and